Welcome to Chapter 26, Human Reproduction, your final and last chapter for this course. Congratulations! So, when we're talking about human reproduction, the primary reproductive organs are called the gonads. Those are your testes and ovaries. So those are considered the gonads, and then there are accessory organs that assist, and ducts, of course, that put fluids into other parts. The gonads themselves, obviously the ovary and the testes, produce the gametes and the sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And it's those hormones that influence reproduction, the menstrual cycle, and the secondary sexual traits that you develop at puberty. First, we're going to do the male, and the male gonads, or the testes, secrete testosterone. So testosterone is the hormone of importance for the male, and they produce the sperm. Now, how testosterone controls or is released is controlled by a feedback loop from the hypothalamus and pituitary. In fact, the same hormones that influence the female reproductive system influence the male reproductive system. Luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. Now, the sperm are produced in the testes, and when they exit, they have to travel through a series of tubes and ducts. The accessory glands that make up or assist with the sperm travel help produce the fluid that the sperm are in, and that fluid is called semen. Now, we'll be looking at what is in semen besides sperm. So here is a side view. It's not the exact same picture that's in your book on page 554. I pulled this one out. I liked the fact that it included one other gland that's not addressed in your textbook, but it is one that I expect you to know. So the textbook doesn't go into as much detail. The testes are inside the scrotum, which is the outside pouch that is outside the body. It keeps the sperm cooler, not at the core temperature of 98.6. That is what assists the sperm in developing. The term spermatogenesis is the development of sperm. That's what produces sperm. That's the process. And they are in seminiferous tubules. Now, you can't see that in this picture. You will in a future, but they're inside the testes. So once we see what's inside, you will see where the sperm are produced, and it's in these tubules. Now, the epididymis sits on top of the testes, and that is where, once the sperm are produced in the testes, they need to go somewhere to mature and also be stored. So that housing facility is the epididymis, which sits right on top of the testes. When the sperm are ready to be released, they go through a series of tubes, and they also get secretions from some of the tubes. So if you follow the vas deferens, you can see it right above the epididymis. It starts at the epididymis because it's the tube that the sperm leave the epididymis through, and they travel through the vas deferens. Now, in your lab, you'll see how the vas loops up and around and goes behind the bladder. The male bladder looks a lot larger than the female, as you're going to see, because we have the uterus sitting on top of the bladder. Now, we already looked at the bladder in the excretion system, or urinary production. So we're not really addressing that now, but there is a connection with the male reproductive system. Now, you can see that the vas travels around, loops behind the ureter, and then the tube continues, but right next to it is something called the seminal vesicle. The seminal vesicle is one of the glands that secretes fluid that makes up the semen. It secretes its fluid into the vas, and now we have that fluid and the sperm. Now, the sperm will go through the ejaculatory duct, which is right behind it. You can see the prostate gland. The prostate gland is another gland that has ducts that puts a fluid, some chemicals, inside the vas, or the ejaculatory duct now, to continue to make semen. Sorry about that. Now it travels down and it joins with the urethra. This is where, in males, the urethra is a tube that works in two major systems. It works in the urinary system because urine passes through it from the bladder, and it also allows sperm to travel through it to be excreted through it. So you can see it starts to enter the urethra, and there's one more gland, and this is the gland that's not pointed out in your textbook. It's called Cowper's, or the bulbourethral gland. I never refer to it as Cowper's, but this picture had it, and I felt this picture was nice and clear, so that's why I included it. I pretty much call it the bulbourethral gland. It's a very small gland, and it sits underneath the prostate. You will see it on the model, and it also secretes some fluid into the ejaculatory ducts. So there are three glands: the seminal vesicles, prostate gland, and bulbourethral, and sperm. All of that together makes up semen. And then if you follow the urethra down, it goes through the penis and out. Okay, that completes that page. Now this is going to start showing you the sperm formation, and it also has cut open some of the organs so you can see the inside of them. See the testes on the right? That one was sliced open, and you can see the inside, which is the seminiferous tubules. Now they pull one out, and you can see it on the right side of your picture. We're going to look inside it, because that's where the sperm are made. But you can see they're highly coiled to fit inside in order to make as many sperm as are made in each hour. Then the epididymis, they've opened that up so you can see it's also a bunch of coiled tubes, because that's where the sperm mature. And then as they are ready to exit, they're going to go out through the vas, which loops up and around over the bladder, and then they've cut it open so you can see the seminal vesicle, and it has a duct that goes right into the ejaculatory duct, which will become the urethra. And then it passes through the prostate, which again has a duct that puts its fluids inside the ejaculatory duct, and then the bulbourethral gland is right below it. The three of the glands put their secretions in, and now you have semen. And they travel through the urethra and out. Now, there are two animations here. They are in the lecture online, and you really need to play them because it'll go through the feedback loop, which is very important, and you do need to know it. The hypothalamus and the pituitary gland are very important in controlling the production of sperm. I have another slide that shows it, but these two animations definitely have more detail than I'm talking about right now. So please play them. You could stop this presentation, go down, and play them. They're both in the lecture. So this picture, which is not in your textbook, it's one that I found, and I thought it did a pretty good job of showing you how the hypothalamus, anterior pituitary, and the testes all work together. The green is the hypothalamus, so that's the brain. And the yellow is the anterior pituitary. The blue circle is the testes. And you can see the arrows and how there is a cycle of arrows, and that's exactly what happens. There is communication going on from the brain to the anterior pituitary down to the testes, which makes testosterone and sperm. So let's look at this picture. The hypothalamus senses what's going on in the body. It has tight control over many of the glands from the endocrine system. For this, it is looking at testosterone and how it is produced. So say the hypothalamus senses that testosterone is low. Okay, there's not enough being produced. And it senses that by the blood supply that passes through it. So it's going to send a message down. And from the hypothalamus to the anterior pituitary, there is something called the gonadal releasing hormone. And that's a GnRH. That hormone is released from the hypothalamus and goes down to the anterior pituitary. Now, the anterior pituitary produces two hormones, and these are the two that are also in females, FSH and LH. LH is luteinizing hormone, and it influences cells inside the testes called Leydig cells. And that is what will produce testosterone and increase the levels. The other hormone, follicle-stimulating cells, go down to Sertoli cells inside the testes. You need to know both of these. And in turn, they cause the testes to make sperm or go through spermatogenesis. So testosterone is also needed for that. And also, the testosterone influences sperm, the production, as well as the primary and secondary sex characteristics. Those are those two green arrows down at the very bottom. Now that red arrow is called a negative feedback loop. What happens is now the testes are producing testosterone. So now we have plenty of testosterone. So the blood supply now going through the hypothalamus is telling the hypothalamus, cut off the gonadal releasing hormone, which in turn sends a message down or stops production in the anterior pituitary, and you see less FSH and LH being produced. And in turn, it stops the production or decreases the production of testosterone, and in turn, less sperm. So this is called a feedback loop. The hypothalamus senses both, too much, too little, and it determines what it will do based on this information that it's getting from the rest of the cells. And that's pretty much the way it works in the female system, except of course there is a little more it's a little more complicated, the female system. Just a couple more slides here, and then I'm going to stop with the male, and I'll start with the female in a new PowerPoint. Okay, this slide looks inside the testes, so you can see the detail of the seminiferous tubules. And in turn, what they've done is they have taken one seminiferous tubule in the bottom picture, and they're showing you a cross-section of one tubule. And if you look at it, the pink is the outer, and then it goes into the white area, which happens to be where, once the sperm are produced, that is where they will travel up to the epididymis. Okay, now this picture here is showing right here. We are now looking at the seminiferous tubule that was on the page before. And it is showing you how the sperm are produced from beginning to end, because the sperm go into that hollow center core and travel up to the epididymis. So up here we have a diploid cell, and this is where spermatogenesis is occurring. It starts with a diploid cell, and in turn it becomes a primary spermatocyte. In other words, it's differentiated enough in order to begin the production of sperm. And it starts to go through meiosis. So we start off with a diploid cell, and we're going to end up, after the two splits, to a haploid sperm with half of the chromosomes. And you can see the process continues all the way through here, and then we finally have the sperm. Right here, they're baby sperm. They need to mature, and they're not ready to be released yet, but they are fully produced. Here is a picture of the sperm in detail so you can see the inside. The head carries the genetic material. In other words, it has the DNA in it. So we've got the 23 chromosomes inside the nucleus. The acrosome is the head, and it's going to secrete an enzyme if it gets inside the egg. The mitochondria are needed for the energy that the flagella is going to need in order to whip back and forth. Without energy, it would not be able to travel the distance that it needs to travel. So testosterone, very important for everything that we are just talking about. Testosterone, though, is synthesized from cholesterol, so it is a lipid. And male hormones don't really become active until puberty. Once testosterone is being produced, that is when you start to see puberty and the sexual characteristics become demonstrated. So that occurs around 15 to 16 in males. Both males and females have testosterone. but it is not a primary hormone in the female. And this is the end of the male reproductive system, and we are going to look at the female after this. The end of part 1.